Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce, where we share real stories of resilience and rising above life's turbulence. That's the word I'm using today. And you want to know why, folks? Because today my guest is retired Captain Reyné OShaunessy. She's a former commercial airline captain turned health and well-being advocate, speaker, and author of This Is Your Captain Speaking and Navigating the Skies to Success. With over 30 years in the cockpit, she knows what it means to perform under pressure and what it costs when you don't come up for air. After a startling diagnosis revealed her cellular age was nearly 30 years older than her actual age, Reyné took a bold turn. Through integrative medicine and healing nutrition, she reclaimed her health and her life. And now she's helping others navigate fatigue, hormones, and high performance living with compassion and real world wisdom. Reyné, welcome to Let Fear Bounce.
Thank you, Kim. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I want to start off with you're a airline pilot
Mhm.
over 35 years. Now, if those listeners and those folks listening, 35 years was a hot minute ago. And back in that day, there weren't a whole lot of female airline pilots. So, what was your mindset in saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a pilot?
Thank you. I feel like I should wear a tiara now.
Yeah, the queen.
But that's a very good question. And it's a question that I am often answered over the years. So, what made me become an airline pilot at a time that women were not in male dominated roles. And, looking back on it, it was a bold move. And I guess I grew up in a time when there weren't many women in the cockpit. Matter of fact, there were very few, if any. But I was drawn to flying, not just to fly the aircraft itself, but what it represented. It represented independence, challenge, perspective. And I was a curious thing, and I think a bit little bold for my time. So there was something about looking out there in the world at 35,000 feet that felt both humbling and powerful at the same time. I didn't know that a woman pilot, when I started, I didn't know one single woman pilot, but that didn't stop me. I just figured, why not me?
And that's a perfect question to ask yourself. Why not me?
Hmm.
Yeah. Now, did you have any female pilots that, there are trailblazers out there that made history, like Amelia Earhart, and there are many others that a lot of folks that we just don't hear about or haven't learned about you. But were any of those any type of, like you read their story and say, I'm going to do that one of these days. I want to continue the trail that she blazed.
Yeah, great question again. And the answer is flat out no. None of them, Bessie Coleman, Amelia Earhart, none of them were really role models for me. But you know what was the best role model for me was seeing airline pilots. Now, I live and still do, a matter of fact, I live in a small town next to Greater Pittsburgh International Airport. And at the time, there was this small airline. Some of you may remember it. Most of you won't, but it's called Allegheny Airlines. Allegheny merged, or didn't merge, took a new name as they grew to US Air, and then they merged with American Airlines. They dropped the US Air name. Now they are just American Airlines. But when Allegheny Airlines was based here in Pittsburgh, well, where I grew up, I had many friends that had fathers as airline pilots. And I remember seeing them when I would go to their houses, and I thought, hmm, that looks like a pretty cool job. And I thought it would be nice to wear a uniform. And then I would hear their stories. So I think that's what really planted the seed. And then when I graduated from high school, I was in the 12th grade and I graduated early, but I had to stay the course until the end of the year. And so my guidance counselor asked me, is there something that you would like to do here in your remaining days in high school? And I talked to my mom and dad about it. And the best advice my dad gave me, because it really started my journey in the aviation industry, was, I think you're going off to college, so you should really know how to type. Remember those old typewriters? He
Yeah.
said that would be a very good skill for you to have as you go off to college. And I went, okay, that's exactly what I'll do. So I told my guidance counselor, he uh, got a hold of, I think, a business teacher. And so I was integrated into a secretarial course and I learned how to type. Now, what I didn't know is that at the end of the semester, all these secretaries were going to be placed in jobs, well, not really jobs, they were like shadowing jobs in companies around the Pittsburgh airport. And of course, Allegheny Airlines at that time was the largest employer. So we each got to, I think there were like 20 girls in the class, no men, 20 girls in the class, and we all signed up for where we would like to do on the job training. And there were 10 of us who signed up for Allegheny Airlines. I was one of them. And when I went off, did my little typing job, I really caught the eye of this one gal in the purchasing department. And she brought me over and she had a conversation with me. At the time, I didn't know that she was kind of interviewing me. And at the end of that semester or the end of that time at Allegheny Airlines, I was the only person who they asked to stay to be a typist for the summer. So I went home, I told my dad, and he said, well, I think that's a wonderful job to have for the summer. And I said, I think so too. And that's where it all started in a typing course that my father said would be a good skill to have. That's where I fell in love with aviation.
And it all kind of came together,
It did. It did.
where you were set up to be. What a cool story.
Yeah.
And how neat to look back on that and see how it played out.
Yeah, it did. But it wasn't all, well, being a female in a male-dominated area, it was tough going at the very beginning. I was not welcomed. I'm considered a trailblazer, so the door was just cracking open for women in aviation, and not only pilot, but ATC controllers, aviation engineers. And anything that has to do mechanics, women mechanics were non-existent as well. There were very, very few of us. So we weren't very welcomed. So we always had to be mindful that whatever we did, we had to do twice as good as men to be thought of half as good. And luckily, as a woman, that's not difficult to do.
I agree.
Thank you.
So you were a commercial airline pilot. Share with the listeners what a commercial airline pilot is.
Well, commercial airline pilot is it's not only a technical position that you have to learn the airplane, obviously, to fly the airplane, but it's also a lifestyle that if you're not ready for it, it comes fast and furious. Some of us endure it, some of us get through it, and others burn out long before their time. So, that's what an airline pilot does. It's irregular schedules, it's not being home for major times in your life, like birthday parties or wedding anniversaries because your schedule is always irregular. Your sleep pattern, in fact, is always irregular, and you're always eating on the go, so you're grabbing whatever is available. So it is truly a go, go, go profession, and you really have to be at the top of your game, and that is not only physically but mentally.
So, as a commercial pilot, did you fly planes like, I'm going to take a trip to Vegas? So you were that pilot, or were you like a FedEx pilot, or what type of commercial type flights did you fly, I guess?
Yeah, and that's another good question because that's something that is not clear to the general public.
Hmm.
When you train as a pilot, you have to get certain ratings, and that starts out with a private pilot. Sometimes they call it a PPL. And once you obtain that private pilot license, then you elevate and you earn your instrument rating. And instrument rating, that's where you learn to fly the airplane under a hood. You don't look out. So you totally are taught to rely on the gauges right in front of you. And of all the ratings that you need to fly an airplane, that is the most difficult because it is a switch of the brain
Mm.
to only believe what is in front of you. And that takes a great deal of trust and skill and precision. So after you get your PPL, you go to your instrument. After instrument, you go to your multi-engine, and then your ATP if you want to take it that far. And then after you get all your ratings, then it's kind of like the permission slip to go out there and accumulate some hours flying either cargo or passengers. So no matter what it is, cargo or passengers, you still have to um, get all the same ratings. There is no difference from cargo to passengers. But you had to earn your stripes.
Right.
You had to earn your stripes before you were able to even apply to a 121 carrier. Now the golden number is 1,500 hours. And after you get that, you accumulate that many hours, then you can apply to major airlines, whether it is a commuter airline with a truncation into their major airlines. Like here in Pittsburgh, we have Endeavor or Republic. I'm sorry, not Endeavor, Republic. Republic flows into the Delta airline stream. So, yeah, once you get all your ratings, you're able to apply to fly either cargo or passengers. In my case, I flew for commuter first, and it was a Piedmont commuter. And I don't know if any of your viewers remember, there was an airline called Piedmont, and US Air merged with them too. So US Air is a bunch of merged airlines together, what we know now as American Airlines. But I flew for them for about a year and a half as captain. And that's where I accumulated my hours before I had the opportunity to go and fly for this great company called FedEx. And I remember telling my mother when I was hired by FedEx, well, let me take a step back first. Before I was hired by FedEx, I was hired by a company, a legacy company called Flying Tigers. And Flying Tigers was a group of aviators who flew into the Middle East, into Saigon and those areas when we were at war, and they brought supplies to our troops and they flew our troops back and forth. So they were at the time the highest paid, we're going to call them airline because they flew not only cargo, but they flew passengers as well. They're the highest paid airline in the world for many, many
Well, it's
reasons.
high risk.
It's very high risk, and they were doing an honorable job for our country, and I think that's one of the reasons why the founding fathers, Mr. Prescott and company, felt that we earned our high salary. So I went to work for them for a very, very short time. A matter of fact, I think it was less than a year. And then FedEx came and bought Flying Tigers because they needed the landing slots in China, in Asia, and you can't buy them now. So Fred Smith, God rest his soul, he has now passed about a month ago. He was the founder of it was first called Federal Express, and where they did a hub and spoke system, and it just kept growing and growing with cargo. Here's a little fact that your viewers may not know. FedEx, well, they went from the name Federal Express to FedEx at a later date. They are considered an airline. Their certification is under an airline. They did not start out as a cargo like UPS. So when FedEx bought Flying Tigers, at that time, I was one of the few women who were qualified to fly on a 747, to actually pilot it. And we were merged into the FedEx system. FedEx had 1,000 pilots. Flying Tigers had about 1,000 pilots. So we made up 2,000 pilots under the FedEx brand.
Wow. Well, that's very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So you were a pilot for 35 years, and then you reached this pivotal point in your life where
Mm.
you were, and tell me if you were on the verge of burnout or you had burnt out and your body was just like telling you, okay, stop, you're done now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, let me kind of lead up to that, and it kind of is attached to the question that you asked me just a little while ago, or one that I offered. It was very difficult being in a
Hmm.
male dominated industry. Um, and it got real tough at times. Being a woman in aviation means that you walk into a room, especially early on, and you're often the only one who looks like you.
Right.
You feel pressure to be perfect, to prove yourself over and over again. And those demands of the job, the long hours, the fatigue, the sacrifice, the pressure, wasn't always glamorous. But I stayed for the fight because I believed in what I was doing, and I believed that the representation mattered, and I believed that every time that I showed up, that I was helping normalize something what was once impossible.
So
And
you were help your goal, because you had mentioned earlier how you said the door was cracked open just a little bit, just enough. So you sticking it out even through, and I mean, we can use our imaginations about how tough it was at times. You
I can
know,
tell you stories that
oh, I'm
even
sure you have many, and that would be another episode, a whole episode of Let Fear Bounce. But you decided personally, I'm going to, well, because you can tell that you're independent and you're very driven. And when I'm thinking, tell me if I'm wrong, you took that step through that slightly cracked open door, and once you're in there, you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be tough. Oh wow, this is really hard. But you know what? I'm going to open up that door wider for
yeah,
other women coming behind me.
yeah, you hit it right on the head. Even when things got rough, I knew that I had more to give, just a little more. I didn't know how much more, but just a little more. So I stayed for not only the trailblazers and for the next generation, I stayed for the woman in me who still loves that view from the flight deck. It was almost like, hey, I earned this spot. If you don't like me, then you leave. I'm staying, you go. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't sometimes break down in tears in the girls' room because that was one of the things that they did at the time. They just picked at you until you were just out of patience. But of course, like the old saying is, you never let them see you cry. You cry, but you just never let them see you cry because that would be a form of weakness. And in a male-dominated job, um, they would say, "Hey, if you can't do this." I mean, there was no HR, there was no DEI,
Right.
there was absolutely nothing. They would say, "Hey, either suck it up, buttercup,
Mm,
or leave."
yeah.
So to answer your question, that was I'm building up to answer your question. Years and years and years of this and the lifestyle and everything kind of accumulated.
Hmm.
It accumulated. And one day, I was sitting in my doctor's office for what I thought was a wellness check, and he said that I had catastrophic high blood pressure. It was through the roof. As a matter of fact, he said you need to go to the hospital now because you are in stroke range. And I sat there in disbelief. I mean, I was just stunned because my whole life, my livelihood
Hmm.
was wrapped around what I do. And back in the day, and still in some many ways now, you have to be physically and mentally um, at the peak of your game, or else they clip your wings. So when he left the room to call transportation because he said I couldn't be driving,
Yeah.
what do you think I did, Kim? Well, you probably know what I did because we've known each other for a long time. Instead of waiting there like a good girl, I boldly again got up off of the examining table and I opened the door and I went to my car. And I got in my car and I drove home. And to this day, I still don't remember how I got home, but I remember how I felt. And that was my pivoting point. That was my pivoting point that I knew that I needed to figure things out. And so I started being very researchy, a researcher. I read every book I could. I talked to a lot of doctors. Some of them were telling me, oh, just take this pill. Oh, just take that pill. Just take this pill. None of them were really getting to the root of the problem. So, through that discovery season, which wasn't long, I found a functional medicine doctor. She has retired now. Her name was Franny Perez. And she gave me these unconventional tests that, of course, insurance companies don't pay for. So it was strictly out of pocket. And through those unconventional tests, kind of like proactive tests, she discovered that my cellular health, as you mentioned, was 30 years above my age. I was at 50 years old, and she said, your cellular age is 80. And when I heard that, I knew that I needed to get really serious about how I was going to fix whatever was what was wrong. And then if that didn't work, modern medicine is wonderful. And then I would take the pill. But uh, 80%, and this is from the AMA, 80% of all disease is lifestyle driven.
Mm, I believe it.
Only 20% is through your DNA or the things that you can't change. But 80%, the AMA said 80% of all of diseases can be altered with lifestyle changes. And
And
that's
look how often we do through life say, oh man, I've had a headache all day long. And you just take an Advil or a Tylenol or whatever, but you don't stop and think, why do you have a headache?
Hmm,
You
yeah,
haven't been drinking enough water. You haven't been getting
yeah.
enough sleep. You're under all kinds of stress every day. Maybe, maybe you're a mom running and doing all the things, working and running the kids and taking care of the hubby and the home. And, you know, those little things we just automatically don't pay attention to. We just kind of ride through them throughout each day. And that all
Absolutely.
adds up, like you just said. You were sitting there at 50 and they told you that your cellular makeup was that of an 80-year-old.
80-year-old. And that translated to me that my life span was not so great.
Yeah.
And that hit me like right between the eye. And that's when I knew I needed to make some real changes and fast.
Yeah.
And especially for women, we have, I'm writing a third book now, and it's about burnout, and I'll just give you a little glimpse of what it's about. In that women, especially, not that men don't, but women, because they work outside of the home, or they work inside of the home, outside of the home, they're taking care of a lot of things. And what is different than from our mothers and our grandmothers? Well, as time has changed over the last 25, 30 years, we had the invention of the internet. We have an invention of cell phones. We have an invention of social media. So our capacity to process
Mm.
things hasn't changed. So what I'm trying to say is our cell phones and our computers that we go through all the time for iOS updates that create more space in their
Right.
memory, in their longevity, as humans, we haven't had an iOS or an update since the beginning of mankind. So within that space, we're just cramming in more and more and more and more and more, and we could all fill in the blanks of what that more is.
Hmm.
We're overwhelmed with social media, with food, with choices. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And what we've done, we're into our margins. And when you go into your margins, you're pushing against burnout.
Hmm.
So what we're feeling is, I am overwhelmed. I am at capacity. That's what you're feeling, that you have no more margins. You have no more space to do that one more thing. But what
Right.
do we all do? We take on, Kim,
Right.
that one more thing.
Right. And then you wonder why you feel anxious or you have panic attacks or you feel
Yes.
overly stressed or depressed. All of
Depressed?
these things happen. And I was just having a conversation the other day about this exact topic, that there's so much information that's in our face every day and we're not meant to
No,
try and absorb all of it.
no, we're not.
We're not supposed to do that. That's not how our brains are wired to do that, to have all of this shoved in our face every day. And and I firmly believe in get off your phone.
Oh, yeah.
Turn off the TV.
Get off your phone. Social media, I watch just family members. If you go into an airport, or if you go into a restaurant, here's that. You go into a restaurant and there's four people, two people, a husband and a wife, a group of people. They're all sitting there
On their phones,
on
not
their
speaking to
phone,
each other at
not
all. Yeah.
speaking. Social media. I have friends that have to look at social media before they go to bed. I have friends that look at it right when they get up. So it takes a conscious effort. And there's a documentary out there, I think it's called The Social Dilemma. And it basically talks about what social media and these apps have done to our own psychology,
Yes.
using our own psychology against us.
Yes.
There
I
is
saw that. I
did you?
highly recommend watching it.
Yes,
It's kind
the
of
social
frightening
dilemma. It was frightening.
because you don't realize you're so used to it. And look at the generation, and that's all they know. That's what they grew up with.
Yes,
So I worry. I'm like, okay, the generation or two behind me, what kind of human beings are they actually going to be? Are they going to be able to handle stuff, take care of stuff?
yeah,
Are they going to be able to thrive?
yeah.
Or are they going to have to find all the answers from their phone?
And basically that's it. And
Yeah.
it is, as you saw in the documentary, it's highly addictive.
Yes. It is an addiction. Yes. And it's frightening. It's
Yeah.
so you do, like you said, you have to make a conscious effort. I did. I quit watching TV. I got rid of cable. I'm on my phone, but I'm not addicted to my phone. I have no problem putting my phone down and not looking at it for hours. Yeah.
Yes.
I was at a restaurant. You mentioned restaurant. I was at a restaurant about a year ago, and there was a family of four, and it looked like it was probably mom and dad and two kids. And as
Mhm.
soon as they sat down, they all pulled out their phones and put them on the floor between their feet. And I went, ooh, family rule just took place.
Wow,
And I
good
just loved
snap.
that. I wanted to go over and say, kudos to you, but I didn't do
Yeah,
that. But it was very noticeable because they all sat down and they all very purposely held out their phones and they each put their phone in between their feet. And
good.
it was not touched. They were not touched the entire time that they were eating, but they were put on the floor between. And I'm like, what a fantastic family rule to have.
That is a rarity, but boy,
Yes, it is.
boy, that's good on them. And
Yes, and that's the one and only time I've ever seen that.
yeah, right.
Well, Renee, I've this as the show is called Let Fear Bounce, I want to ask you, was there or what was a fear that you had to face or you had to overcome so you could continue being the trailblazer that you are?
Mm. Kim, there's a saying that your greatest strengths are your greatest weaknesses, right?
Mm.
And sometimes it's a fear. And my fear would be if I stopped achieving, I would stop being mattered. And that wasn't easy to unlearn. But what I've come to understand is this, that you don't have to earn your rest. You don't have to prove your value by pushing past your capacity.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's something for folks to chew on.
Mhm. It just overcoming that fear meant learning to value myself, not just for my performance, Kim,
Hmm.
but for my presence,
Yeah.
not for what I bring to the table, but for who I am.
And so often, it's so prevalent, especially with females. And I know men, it happens with men too, but especially with females, it's so prevalent. We we don't give ourselves that grace.
We recognize that if we do recognize that we need rest, we don't know how to do it.
Yes, I agree, because I'm one of those. I
That's
agree. I agree. Now,
we
see,
don't know what
that
that
could be
looks
that could be the theme of the whole next time you come on.
like. Okay.
So right now, though, I'd like you to please share with the listeners where they can find you, all your good stuff, what you might have coming up, where your books can be found, and all of that good stuff.
Oh, thank you. Well, you could find me, my books on Amazon. You could either put my name in there, which I highly recommend because you won't remember the name of the books, which is This is Your Captain Speaking, What You Should Know About Your Pilot's Mental Health. And the other one is Navigate to Success. And that is for collegiate level reading. That's the book that I always wanted when I was a student pilot. So, two different extremes. My third book is coming out at capacity in the next 2 months. So you will also be able to find that on Amazon. And my website is www.piloting to the number two wellbeing.com. And there you could see what I'm up to, where I've been, where I've talked. And the most exciting thing is I have created a retreat for 2025. And it's
Ooh.
going to be in the American Riviera on the coast of Santa Barbara. And it's a retreat for high performance women. And quite honestly, that's all of us, where
Yeah.
we go and talk about things and be pampered, but talk about hormonal health, nutritional health, all these things that were lacking in my life. And when I turned them around, I am very happy to say that I am not taking any medication, and it's been over 25 years since I got that diagnosis. So
Wow.
anyway, check it out.
So all that information can be found on the Piloting to Wellbeing.
It is pilotingtowellbeing.com.
Awesome. And it's a retreat. How
Yeah.
many days? How many days is it?
It's a 3-day retreat, October 2nd, 3rd, and we depart on the 4th, but there's an extra day that you can add on as an optional day, the 5th. So 2 through 5 or 2 through 4. But check it out. I think you might like it.
Awesome. Awesome. Reyné, this has been a true pleasure. It's just, I love talking to women like you because you see some, I like how you mentioned earlier, you said about the Navigating the Skies to Success, your second book that's for the collegiate level.
Mhm.
And you said, I wrote it because that's something I wish was available to me when I was that age and wanting to become a pilot. And the things that you're doing, you're seeing a need and you're filling it. And I think that's awesome. And we need more folks that do that, because especially women.
Yeah.
I look back at my daughter and see that I'm so happy that I raised a very independent, strong
Yes.
young lady who knows her mind, knows how to go after what she wants. And don't let the world tell you you're not good enough because you're a girl.
Yes.
So I just love having folks like you on the show and highlighting what it is that you've done, because you did blaze a trail and you did open that door wider for people. So for those young ladies out there listening right now, I'm going to thank you on behalf of all of them, because there just might be someone after listening to this going, you know what, maybe I can step through that door too.
Wonderful. And if you can think it, you can do it.
That's
So go after your dreams.
That's right. Doesn't it just make you want to throw your hands in the air and give a big old yeehaw?
That's that's right. Exactly. Exactly.
Well,
Yes.
thank you once again, Reyné, for being my guest on Let Fear Bounce today.
You're so welcome.
And everybody out there, thank you once again for tuning in. New episodes each Wednesday, folks, are uploaded on YouTube, Spotify, all the listening platforms. And I am so happy that you decide to spend just a small part of your day with myself and my guests each week. This is Kim Langling, the host of Let Fear Bounce. Everybody be well, stay well, and above all, be blessed.
Kindness. It's simple, powerful, and free. Yet, it holds the extraordinary ability to change someone's day or even their life. In the book, Nuggets of Hope, Cultivate Kindness, available on Amazon, you'll find stories of spreading kindness through simple acts. Grab your copy of Nuggets of Hope today and discover how you can transform your world with kindness. Let's make the world a little brighter together. Order your copy of Nuggets of Hope, Cultivate Kindness on Amazon.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. New episodes drop each week, folks, on YouTube and Spotify and most listening platforms. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all the things. So until next time, folks, take a deep breath, be kind to yourself, and as always, let fear bounce.